You all know people who feel locked in their lives. You may be one yourself. Ken Robinson, in his book, The Element, wrote of people at the age of 39, 52, 64, who feel that their opportunity has passed. Perhaps you feel it's now too late, that it's unrealistic to pivot your life suddenly into a new direction. Many people who talk to me could easily be retelling the story of Sisyphus. I've spoken of him before. His given task was to roll a boulder up the hill. It would then roll back down the hill, and he was to roll it up the hill, up and down, the eternal up and down. It's a story that wears you out as you read it, as you hear it. How can you restart your life after such exhaustion? So a relationship ends. A job ends. Or your working days are over. There is illness. There is injury. There is loss. There are many losses. Any number of books that are now being written on this common experience. Gordon Livingston, psychiatrist in America, in his excellent book, Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart, he wrote this: the three components of happiness are something to do, someone to love, something to look forward to. And he said the absence of any one of these is enough to darken your life. Well, in these days of Googling, my eyes were drawn to several entries. 100 ways to make you laugh. We need that. 100 ways you can love your husband. 100 ways to love your cat. You can see the whole list of them. 100 ways to do this, 100 ways to do that. So in this month of July, I've decided to focus on 100 ways to do that, to do this. 100 ways. It's far too excessive to talk of 100 if you miss the one critical issue. So today, 100 ways to restart your life. No, not 100 ways. Just 2 or 3 will do. Restart your life after you've hit the wall, after you've come to a standstill, after you've been locked up for long enough. I've taken 3 passages from the scriptures, as you heard. The mythic story of Noah and the flood, or after the flood. The flood, the symbol of chaos. He'd been in the ark long enough. It was time to restart. Well, in his restarting, he made a mess of it. I tell you, he made a dreadful mess of it. But at least the door was open to him, and he was given the chance to restart. The epistle I read, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, reminds us of the resources within us. The resources that are given, the givens of life. Yes, it says we can endure, we can adapt, we can bounce back, we can restart. And then the gospel, the parable of the prodigal son. A new start. After he'd taken a good long look at himself, we're looking at what was possible. Now, these stories have survived many generations. But when you are the one who has hit a bad patch, when you are the one that knows that life can never be the same again, when you're the one that's made a dreadful mistake, I think you're sure to ask question number 1. How do I restart my life? And having asked question number 1, you rush on and say to question number 2, is it possible to restart my life? The Roman poet Ovid, before the time of Christ, wrote about this, comparing the anxiety of the human being with a tree about to fall. She wavers, just like a tree that the axe blade has girdled completely, when only the last blow remains to be struck, and the woodsman cannot predict the direction of the fall. She, after so many blows to her spirit, now totters, now leaning in one, now in the other direction. Nor is she able to find any peace. Is it possible to restart after many blows? And yes, you know it is possible. It is possible because you've seen other people do it. Other people have told you they've done it. You've read the stories of how other people have done it. We're attracted to these stories. They've done it. They've done it. We've seen it happen. Even the Old Testament Job, of all people, in his anguish and in his suffering, he pointed to the tree. He pointed to the tree and he said, if a tree is cut down, there is hope that it will sprout again. But we chafe. We chafe to put the third question. The third question is, then how is it possible? How will it happen for us? Other people have their resurrections, but ours doesn't seem to come. Yes, our dreams may arouse the images of a new day. The fantasy of the future may be a light that glimmers in the distance, but we need the reality. How is it possible? When so much around us says that is no longer possible, nor is that. When things did not happen as we thought they should or would, the infant cannot be brought back to life. Time ticks on and you can't wind back the clock. Aging bones cannot be youthful bones again. So many doors have closed. And you're likely to say to me, well, if you say it is possible to restart, get on with it. Tell us how it is possible. So I'd like to tell you a story that I find fascinating. It's about the largest and most sensitive and most powerful telescope that the world will ever know, has ever known. It is being built at this time in one of the southern provinces of China. It has a 500-meter aperture. It will probe 3 times further into the universe than that huge Puerto Rican telescope. It will uncover thousands of new galaxies and deep sky objects up to 7 billion light years away. It is being built in China, and it will transform astronomy in ways that previous generations could never have conceived possible. Why do I tell you this story? Because it says these things are possible. We're going through a phase in this country, as in some other countries, where increasing numbers of people are being seduced into what I call a mindless negativity. There's negativity about the financial situation, about the economic situation, about the political situation. There's negativity in our social courtesies. There's negativity at the breakfast table. There's negativity at the lunchtime. And there's negativity at the dinner table. All there every day. No wonder we get absorbed by the negative prospects of the future. But then remember the symbolism of Noah's Ark story. It tells how Noah opened the hatch, the window of the ark, and he sent the bird out. And its message came back eventually to say, yes, a restart is possible, and it's waiting for you. Enough of all the negativity. A restart. We need that imagery. We need these symbols. We need people to open a window on the possibilities yet to be explored. So I go to the fourth question. Did you get the first 3? Can you restart? Is it possible? How is it possible? Fourth, what is possible? What is possible? The telescope story tells us that the universe is full of possibilities. There will always be things that we cannot understand, that are beyond us, but the givens of life, the givens are there for us to explore. And they become a symbol of what we can do in our own lives. So much of our own life remains unexplored, hidden, and we're likely to close off and say, it's finished. The givens of life are not only out there in the wider universe, they're not only out there in the heights and depths, in all those things most wonderful, as Newton's hymn describes, but they're also the givens of our inner resources, from which we gain a different perspective, from which we derive new strength if we'll listen to it, from which we can contemplate what Newman called God's presence and his very self and essence, all divine. We may wonder what those words might mean, but we get the drift. We get the drift. There is a spiritual strength waiting to be explored. There is a strength of presence that inspires a sense of life restarting. Many of you know that psychologists today are writing books and articles in the journals and in the popular magazines about mindfulness. And there are workshops being conducted on mindfulness. Mindfulness is being talked about online. There are videos, the whole lot, mindfulness. And as I come to examine what it's about, it looks very much like what I call an enlightened prayer. An enlightened prayer. So much praying, so much of our prayers here, elsewhere, wherever, just gabbling gibberish, really, as people gabble. An enlightened prayer centers the mind. It calls for quietness, a quiet moment. It changes demands into gentle caring. It rearranges our thoughts. It lifts us to be in harmony with a higher universe. Enlightened prayer, mindfulness. When all doors seem to be closed and restarting your life seems an unrealistic suggestion, I suggest we might pause and enter into a time of quietness, quiescence, and there to wait for that inner strength to re-emerge. Was a time, of course, when we were too busy, too impatient, too intellectual. Not now. Now we know that quietness is a high essential. Human beings through the centuries have sought a way to that quietness. Socrates and Aristotle, they spoke of the great qualities of reason and rationality to understand it. People of religion and the spirit pointed to the strength coming from a contact with what they called the divine. Artists and poets and musicians lifted the strength of the human spirit and their capacity for creative expression. The existentialists called for that possibility of finding meaning and courage amidst the chaos and the absurdities, the tohu bohu of human existence. The Buddhists and the Eastern thinkers pointed to enlightenment, to selfless action, to our oneness with nature. And all of us, wherever we sit on the spectrum, searching continually for courage, for that engagement, that renewal. Would you believe it? Way back in the Old Testament prophet spoke of rising up with wings like eagles. And Psalm 103 said, "My God brings a healing influence over my emotional wounds. Even when I hit rock bottom, a pathway is there for me to recover and be renewed." Psalm 103, written at least 1,000, probably 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. 100 ways to restart your life? 100 ways? Just 3 or 4 will do. We know this. We can create our restart. When we're up against it, we look to find an alternative pathway. We know that others can help us restart, sometimes by gentle encouragement, sometimes by a jump start. We know that restarts can happen spontaneously. Open the hatch, and light flows in. The great symbols keep alive these possibilities of that spontaneous restart. And we also know that restarts often come in sealed packages, and we need to persist in trying to open them, because there are some of the great secrets whereby it is possible to restart. Would you please stand?